Mongols were dealing with the Mexican Mafia and providing them with guns. He started pulling in them little gangbangers who thought they could go back to the neighborhoods and still sell dope without paying the tax to the Mexican Mafia. It ain't about who's the biggest, the baddest, and all that. It's about who's got the numbers. This is San Fernando Valley's Mongol shirt.
Oh, awesome. Hey, folks. My name is Rene Enriquez, and you are watching Uncensored. Today we have a special treat. I was talking to somebody at a law enforcement event, and somebody pointed out our guest, Billy Queen. This is Mr. Billy Queen from Under and Alone, the only federal agent ever at the time to infiltrate a outlaw motorcycle gang. In fact, he was a patched-in member of the Mongols and is the author of Under and Alone, and we have him here to talk to you about his experience in that. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me, Rene. And it was very interesting. I had no idea at the time when I was trying to get into the Mongols. That's the only thing that I was concerned about, was actually getting into the Mongols and getting as much evidence as I could against the guys. We knew what they were doing, and it was everything from stealing motorcycles to murder. And that's why ATF wanted to get into them so bad. Nobody had ever been able to get into them. So my concern at the time was getting in, was the drug trafficking, the gun trafficking, the assaults and murders that they had committed. The Mexican Mafia never crossed my mind. It didn't cross my mind until one day, when I say they, the Pico chapter, who at the time was being run by Doc Cavazos, they were dealing with the Mexican Mafia and supplying the Mexican Mafia with guns. Well, that got my attention. So now I wanted to know what was going on, and I started paying attention to it. And they were asking for guns from our chapter. Well, I think they had gotten behind, or I'm not sure exactly what went wrong, but things started to go wrong. And we were giving guns to the Pico chapter, who was giving the guns to the Mexican Mafia. So obviously I was interested in it as could be to ATF, and it was to me too. And we went over one day, met with the Pico chapter, and unloaded guns, and they had a trunk full of guns that they were turning over to the Mexican Mafia. So it was, to say the least, really interesting. But then again, I was concerned about getting my full patch at the time. So that was just something that I passed on to ATF, that the Mongols were dealing with the Mexican Mafia and providing them with guns. And that was only part of what I was really interested in. They were doing so much, and there were multiple murders that they wanted information on too. So I'm trying to do a little bit of everything, and I'm trying to stay alive.
See, that's the question I had. Like, was there ever a point where you were like deathly afraid, like this is going to go down, I'm going to have to protect myself?
Well, I was involved in 3 armed robberies, and actually what they were was extortions and drug collection debts. And I was praying to God that nothing was going to go wrong during these robberies, because I'm standing there with 3, 4, 5 other Mongols armed, getting ready to kill these people if they didn't pay up. And they're getting read the riot act from the Mongols, and I'm praying to God that they just turn their money over or whatever they wanted, because my line in the sand was murder. I wasn't going to let them kill anybody in front of me. And I knew that if I had to stop it, I might shoot 1 or 2 Mongols before they started shooting me. That really weighs on you.
You know, and that's the interest I had. First, I read your book while I was in prison. I read Under and Alone, and I was fascinated by it. So here's an ATF agent that actually got patched in, which is tantamount to making your bones in the mob. So I read that, I said, wow, this guy got made a Mongol, they call it patched in. And I have very little knowledge about outlaw motorcycle gangs. This is not my forte at all. But the parallels between the Mongols and the Mexican Mafia piqued my interest. So Doc Cavazos was originally from Northeast LA, and you said he was an Avenues gang member and had associations in the past.
Yeah.
Where do you think it went wrong between the Mongols and the Mexican Mafia?
Well, I know it started to go wrong when I was in, because the Mongols weren't coming up with the guns that they had promised. I wasn't part of that. But I know that it became a problem. But the real problem came when Cavazos was made president. He thought that he could run around and act like he was still with the avenues and still peddle drugs in the communities without paying taxes to the Mexican Mafia. And the Mongols, of course, ain't paying taxes to anybody. And they told the Mexican Mafia they weren't paying taxes, or at least Doc Cavazos did. And that's where it all went wrong.
You know, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I've been doing this for a long time, about 25 years now, providing case support, expert witness testimony, particularly for the about the Mexican Mafia, and I'm familiar with this to some degree. I believe that Doc Cavazos' big mistake was allowing Sureño gang members, or gang members that were formerly Sureños, into the club and patching them in without bikes, and then taking the position that we're the Mongols and we're not Sureños, so we do not have to pay you. That's where the real conflict occurred. And you know about any murders that occurred between the Mexican Mafia and the Mongols?
I know about the murders, but I don't have any personal knowledge about it. But I certainly know, what happened. And the assaults that happened that would have turned into murders if they'd just been better shots or something. It all really went bad. They had some meetings, so they had some face-to-face meetings and stuff, and Cavazos got too big for his britches and literally told the Mexican Mafia just to piss off. They weren't going to pay anything. They weren't going to do anything. There were no concessions and stuff, and that's when the murders started.
I'm familiar with the tattoo parlor murder, the first one that occurred. Then the Risky Claiborne murder. I testified in that trial. He killed a Mongol at a bar. They're going down the freeway, followed him out after. And then I'm familiar with the Falcone pizza murders, where two Mexican Mafia associates ambushed a group of weekend bikers who happened to be Christians, but they thought they were Mongols, and they killed two of them in the parking lot. So there was a lot of bloodshed. And I also knew of Doc Cavazos after I had flipped and started cooperating with the feds. I was housed by the FBI, DEA, and ATF at different times. On one occasion, Doc Cavazos was being held in Montebello Police Department, and that was an option for cooperating witnesses because they have to, you know this, you were a Fed before, so they housed us in specific locations that facilitated cooperation, debriefing, and protection. So they met those three-prong test, right? And Montebello was one of those locations. I could not go there because Doc Cavazos refused to have me there. And he was so important to the ATF at the time because he had flipped, him and his brother and his son had flipped, and they were all three housed there. I could not go. So, and I didn't even know the guy. I didn't have any beef with him, maybe because he thought I was Mexican Mafia, or that I had some beef or something like that, or maybe it was to protect the integrity of the case. I don't know.
Well, I want to back up a little bit. Cavazos was trying to become the president of the Mongols way back before any of this happened. And the Mongols were going to kill him. I mean, he was president of the Pico chapter. And I was secretary treasurer of the San Fernando Valley chapter. And so I went down to a national meeting when Cavazos was there. And they already had all this planned. They were going to do away with Cavazos. And I stood up. But I didn't want to. They would have drug him out back. They don't ordinarily shoot another patch. They would have taken it from him, declared him just another person, and killed him. But I stood up in that meeting and said, hey, wait a minute. Cavazos has got his ideas, what he feels like the Mongols should be doing and stuff, and we all do. Let's not start killing each other because somebody's got a different opinion and stuff. Cavazos is alive because I stood up and said, hey, let's not kill somebody because they got a different opinion of somebody. But it was long-haired Dave at that time was the president, and they had plans to do away with Cavazos.
So you provided deconfliction and decompression.
I stood up, and had I not stood up, Cavazos never would have become president. He would never would have become anything else. That'd have killed him.
So he wasn't just the chapter president. He was the national president?
He was the national president when everything went wrong because of all the stuff that you said he brought his avenues days into the Mongols and stuff. But this was after the shootout between the Hells Angels and the Mongols in Laughlin, and they knew there was going to be a full-on war after that. So Cavazos started bringing anybody and everybody he could into the club, to include people that couldn't even ride motorcycles and stuff.
So he's recruiting for numbers.
Yeah, yeah. And it looked like they were going to need it, but didn't turn out that way. The Mongols have the Hells Angels grossly outnumbered in California. They would have had to bring the rest of the nation into California to fight the Mongols here. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. It ain't about who's the biggest, the baddest, and all that. It's about who's got the numbers. And out here on the West Coast, the Mongols had the numbers.
I think that's where the Mongols were wrong. They thought they had numbers. They thought they could oppose the Mexican Mafia, and the Mexican Mafia has vast amount of numbers of soldiers on the streets.
Yeah, the Mexican Mafia grossly outnumbered probably all the biker gangs put together. Mm-hmm. That was really stupid of Cavazos to try to take on the Mexican Mafia.
I questioned the intelligence in recruiting Sureño gang members when he did it. There were guys walking around with not patched in. There were prospects. There were guys that were patched in that didn't have bikes. And there were guys that were formerly associates of the organization, the Mexican Mafia. And when they were approached by associates like, hey, you're dealing dope, it's time to kick in, they said, no, we don't have to. We're Mongols now.
Yeah.
That's what evoked the ire of the Mexican Mafia,
yeah.
that they were opposing the authority. Individuals who once told the line were now opposing the authority of the organization.
Well, what you're talking about, they weren't involved in that until Cavazos started bringing in the gangbangers from East L.A. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to worry about that. But after the shootout in Laughlin, with his effort to bolster the numbers of the Mongols, he started pulling in them little gangbangers who thought they could go back to the neighborhoods and still sell dope without paying the tax to the Mexican Mafia. And that just went wrong, you know?
You know, at one point, the Mexican Mafia even put a green light on them in the prisons, you know, and I ran across a couple in the PC yards I was housed on, and I got along okay with them, you know. I felt that antipathy there, like the resentment, that I was a symbol, even though I was no longer a Mexican Mafia member. I felt the resentment. We never had beef. I never had a problem with the Mongols. In fact, the only biker I ever had a problem with was a guy named Chainsaw from the Boggles that I stabbed in DBI. But the Mongols never gave me a problem. I never gave them a problem. But I realized that there was resentment because I represented the symbol of the organization that had once tried to kill them all.
Yeah, sure. It's just like the Mongols and the Hells Angels. You know, you might not have a problem with the Hells Angel, particular guy, but if you catch them out by themselves, you can get away with it. You're expected to kill them, mm-hmm. and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, it's still like that today.
So is Doc and his entire family and that whole administration that he had, are they considered out bad? Because does Doc taint everybody that was under him?
Absolutely, he's out bad. Absolutely, he's out bad. Besides everything that the greatest majority of people know about what happened between the Mongols and the Mexican Mafia, Doc was stealing money from the Mongols, and they found that out too. And I don't know where he is today. As far as I know, he's still in prison, but he had gotten stabbed in prison. Mm-hmm. But it was a number of reasons that he's out bad. And his son, you know, his son had moved up in the Mongols. Mm-hmm. And I don't know today where his son is, but I know he ain't in the Mongols.
I believe they're in phase 1 of the witness protection program. And that's all I'll say about that. They're in phase 1 of the witness protection program. Yeah. I believe they're still in phase 1 because I think they got lengthy sentences, but they obviously cooperated, so it resulted in a reduction of their sentence as per 5K1, their agreement with the United States Attorney's Office. And I'm just speculating. I have no specific knowledge about the deals they made or anything like that, but that's typically how it goes. Yeah. So I know they were in pre-WITSEC when I was being housed, and it was anticipated they were going to WITSEC, phase 1. They might even be in phase 2 now, back in the community. I seriously doubt that, but but that is my knowledge of where they're at now.
Well, he was in a prison in Texas, and I had a friend of mine out there told me, yeah, Cavazos got stabbed out there, and I don't know who stabbed him, but he got stabbed. So at the time, I was concerned about him getting killed by the Mongols, but I'll be surprised if he doesn't get stabbed again.
You know, it seems like he jumped from the frying pan into the fire.
He sure did.
Yeah, because, I mean, prisons, even in protective custody, it's a dangerous place, filled with killers, filled with individuals who are looking to make a name for themselves. And you know, Doc is a big name. He's a big name. Everybody knows that name now because of your book.
Well, another thing, during that shootout in Laughlin, I mean, there are videos everywhere. You'd see Cavazos ran. When it was time to get down, take care of business, Cavazos ran. He didn't stand up like Penny and like so many other Mongols. The shit hit the fan and he took off.
Was this the video that was depicted in the news where it started by the slot machines?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that video. And
Yeah.
Doc, why didn't they declare him out bad when he ran? Because in the Mexican Mafia, if you show cowardice, and
You
run,
know, I wasn't in at that time, but I remember how much noise it made. That, hey, take a look, when the shit hit the fan, Cavazos took off. Yep.
yeah, in the mob, he would have been declared what we call on the lista, the hit list, right? And he would have been dealt with.
Yeah.
That there's no excuse for showing cowardice, and running is showing cowardice. So I'm just scratching my head, thinking like, why didn't they whack this guy when they had the chance? And why did they elect him national president even after all the smut he had on him? But again, that's not my forte. Anything else you want to add, Billy?
Well, Cavazos was really political. That's all he wanted to be, was the president of the Mongols, and he went after it, and he was able to convince a lot of people. Obviously, he became president, but then everybody saw what he was and who he really was. So he's getting his due today.
As you know, you break the law, you go to prison. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And I think that what you put out, you receive. You know, in some way. I don't believe in karma, but I believe that if you emanate nefarious activities, illegal activities, the violence, it's going to come back to you in some fashion, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's reaping that right now. But I wish him well. I don't have any animosity towards him or any Mongol. I think it was an unfortunate incident that was caused solely by Doc Cavazos and his mentality to recruit members. But I truly appreciate you being on the show, Billy. Any final words?
I'm glad that you are where you are today, and I wish you the best. And we'll see. Now the Mongols are like the second biggest motorcycle gang in the country, so we'll see where it all goes.
It's going somewhere. So with that said, folks, this concludes another episode of Rene Enriquez Uncensored. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. And one last push here. I encourage all of you to go out and buy Under and Alone, authored by Billy Queen, the gentleman sitting here. This is a special treat, and I wanted to bring it to you because it paralleled with the Mexican Mafia. The Mexican Mafia has intimate involvement with the Mongols. I hope you enjoyed the episode. With that said, peace out, folks. Be safe.